Welcome, everyone. My name is Vera Sobalski. I am the Graduate Program Manager in the Mechanical Engineering program here at the University of Colorado Boulder, and you are at the Department of Mechanical Engineering PhD student panel. So today's rundown of events will be just basically an intro, just a reminder of our deadlines and application fee waivers. I get a lot of emails about that, so I wanted to discuss that. We will go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves. And after that, I have a couple of questions lined up for them. And then after those questions, we will open up the floor for your questions. And so we'll make sure we have time for that at the end. We will stop recording at that time so you all feel comfortable to share your screens and can ask those questions without feeling like someone is recording you. So if you do have questions during the panel about some of the items that the panelists are talking about, feel free to put them in the chat and the panelists will be able to look at them and address them in the chat or reference them directly. Reminder of our deadlines for international applicants applying to our PhD program. Your deadline is December 1, so you still have some time. We did post a presentation last year about creating a competitive PhD application that is on our website under recruitment events. I encourage you to check that out. That is still relevant today. And there are some really great tips from faculty who sit on our application review. They provide some suggestions. So I encourage you to check that out. Application fee waiver. If you are interested in a waiver, it is a competitive process to get one. So please, if you have a faculty member if you haven't muted yourself, please make sure to mute yourself during this portion, and then we can unmute later. So if a faculty member is interested in working with you, please have them email megrad@colorado.edu, and we can request for that waiver to be applied. Additionally, if you are interested in a waiver, I've listed a couple of items for you to complete by November 15th. And if you do that, you will be considered for an app fee waiver. So make sure you can start an online application. You have to submit language scores, the majority of your application. And one of the panelists, if you could please mute. There's some noise in the background. That would be helpful. And then please meet the minimum GPA requirements. We're looking for an equivalent of 3.4. Domestic PhD applicants, your deadline is December 15th. We have a slightly earlier deadline for international applicants because it takes longer to process some of those applications. The fee waiver, there's some information on our website about that. So if you're at a GPA is 3.4 or higher, you apply by November 15th by 2022, not 2021, we will review your application for an application fee waiver. All right, I think that is it for some basic general deadline reminders. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And what I will do is ask our panelists to introduce themselves so we can get to the part of this event that you've been waiting for, which is to hear from our students. So let's start with, we'll start with Skylar, and then I'll hop around to the next person. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe what area you're focusing on.
So, hello everyone, I'm Skylar Kern. I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska. I also did my undergrad at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. So I am a 6-year graduate student in the Turbines and Energy Systems Laboratory, led by Peter Hamilton. Yeah, is that kind of what you want?
Yeah, that's great. Kenichiro, go for it.
Hi, my name is Kenichiro. I'm from Japan, and my undergrad program was in Keio University, that is in Japan. So maybe I guess most of you don't know about it. And I'm a third-year PhD student, and my research project is focusing on solid mechanics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Hi, all. I'm Mary. I'm also a third year in the Turbulence and Energy Systems Lab. My research is in the thermofluids sector, and my undergrad, I got my undergrad back in the University of Pittsburgh.
University of Pittsburgh, I used to work there. That's right. Let's forget about that. Kieran and then Charlie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kieran. I am also a third year. I work in the nanostructured polymer lab led by Dr. Yufu Ding. My work primarily looks at acoustic vibrations and bubbles right now. And I am originally from Philadelphia, did my undergraduate at Temple University.
Two Pennsylvanians. Charlie.
My name is Charlie. I am also a third-year PhD student. I did my undergrad in Michigan, and I'm from Michigan, and now I work in Professor Chinmay Bond's research group, and I work on solid-state batteries.
All right. Thank you. And so I'll be calling on someone to get the conversation started when I ask a question, but if you want to jump in and, follow up on someone's comment, feel free to do that, panelists. So the first question we have is, I think, for our audience members who are looking at applying to different programs, thinking about graduate school, some have already decided they want to apply here, some have started an application. So I think it would be interesting to know what went into your decision to apply to the University of Colorado Boulder and then accept your admission decision, because typically, often our students will receive several offers. So let's get started with Kieran.
Cool. So I was already living in Colorado at the time, working down at NREL in Golden. I got a taste of the Colorado life. So I definitely knew the PhD would be really hard. And I would need to have some sort of life balance. So Colorado has so much to offer. I was pretty adamant about staying in the state so I could stay sane when I'm not working, go play in the mountains or something.
Charlie, you want to follow up?
Yeah, I think my answer is pretty similar. I was pretty picky about which programs I was going to apply to in the first place. So my first level of filtering was just whether there were professors I would want to work with. And I chose that mostly just based on their websites. And then I reached out to a few professors, and the ones I was most excited to hear back from were from CU. So that made it a little bit easier to get excited about it. And then when I came to visit, the campus was awesome and the people were really nice and happy. And out of all the visits I did, this was the one that left me feeling the most excited about doing a PhD. So it was honestly a pretty easy decision.
Thank you. We'll go to Skylar, Mary, and Kenichiro.
Yeah, so I originally came here as part of like a summer undergrad research program before I applied for graduate school. And so just having been here before, I kind of knew the environment and knew that I'd be comfortable here. The other thing is when I got to the point of applying to graduate school, so I basically drew a line in the middle of the country and was like, I don't want to go east of this line. And so this was sort of one of the better schools that I got accepted to on this side of the country. So I was like, this is probably going to work out, especially since I've been here before. And, having worked with the advisor that I was going to come here to work with, again, just made me feel more comfortable about my situation in general.
All right. So yeah, when I was applying, I made a list of 3 things that were important to me. And those were the research, the lab / PI, and work-life balance. So I was kind of like Charlie, and the type of research is the first thing I filtered by when I applied everywhere and did my cold emails and all that to potential advisors. And then once I heard back, Colorado, once I came here and I got along with my lab great, the PI, I asked him his advising style and I thought it would match well with mine. And then on top of that, it was everyone was happy. You'll do recruitment places and some people are, you're not smiling as much as I would like in the future. So all in all, that's why I chose CU.
Might be all that sunshine. So, go for it, Ken.
Okay, so to be honest, I didn't focus on research works to choose universities, and actually, I really like mountains, so that's why I chose CU. And I heard that this state is relatively safer than other states, so that was the second reason why I chose CU.
It is really pretty here. We decided to move here before ever seeing the place, and we were like, oh my gosh, the mountains are right there. So it's nice to live in a place that is so pretty. So and then, okay, the next question I have, so maybe we won't ask Kenichiro because it's about research. I'm just kidding. But what research projects are you working on? And how did you go about choosing your research advisor? I think choosing your research advisor is something that we do a little bit differently at Colorado. I know a lot of applicants hesitate to, the way we admit applicants with funding after you do an admission interview. And at that point, you might not have a research advisor, but you can still accept your offer, and you'll have time in the spring and summer, and even at the beginning of the fall, before you start to find an advisor to try out working in a lab. And some of our students even will switch labs. And so I wanted you to talk about your process of finding an advisor, and then how that went for you. Let's start with Charlie on this one.
So I'm one of the ones that switched, like Vera said. So I'll give you the full story and I'll try to keep it brief. But I came into grad school thinking that I wanted to do combustion research. So I found a professor who did that, and she brought me on to work on a collaborative project that was interdisciplinary between combustion and batteries. And once I got working on it, I realized that I kind of liked the batteries more than I liked the combustion. So I ended up switching into the research group of the collaborator that I was working with. And it's worked out really well so far. So now I do solid state batteries, like I said. I don't know, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, about when in your degree program did you switch advisors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I switched in January, so I was halfway through my second year, which I think is like maybe a little late in the game, but it's worked out pretty well so far.
It's unusual, but it does happen.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I appreciate about this program is our advisory team and graduate chair will work with students who are interested in moving to another lab, because sometimes it's a personality fit, it's a research interest, things like that change. So this is a program where we try to work with you throughout that process. So thanks. Anyone else want to, Kieran, you switched labs as well, right? So maybe you go next.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I switched twice. So that's like a shocker, but it's not that big of a shocker. The first experience was with my initial advisor who gave me the offer. They were a computational solid mechanics lab. And I initially came to grad school to pursue like sustainability focused research projects. That's something that I am passionate about. So when I left the group, we left on great terms, and the first year is meant for exploring. There's no real commitment that the student has with their initial advisor. These sort of things happen, and that was mostly based off of, I think, a choice of interest on the project. And then came my second project where Vera and Anna actually linked me up with the two principal investigators, and we've been doing really good work together. And the second switch happened from my main advisor to my co-advisor, where my co-advisor then became my main advisor, and vice versa. And I think that was mostly based off of my interest more towards membrane filtration as opposed to biological cell sciences and things like that. All in all, the department was really supportive through both of those transitions, which were stressful at the time, but were really, I guess, helpful along the way, I guess, for the support I had. So it all worked out at the end.
Thank you. And I think the majority of our students do stay with their advisor, but we do have a handful that are interested in transitioning to another lab, and we certainly work with them on that. We'd rather the students and the faculty be happy with the work they're doing and the groups that they're in. So Mary, and then Skylar and Ken.
Yeah, so I guess to answer the first one, I do computational research for the ocean and carbon cycle. I have kind of the opposite story. When I was looking and applying, I was very much advisor focused and lab focused. So I found my advisor now just doing my previous rounds of research for schools, and fortunately it stuck out. And so I started working for him the summer before first year, and I've been in this lab ever since.
Yeah, so I guess my turn. So I actually work on like the other side of the research that Mary works on. So she's doing the carbonate cycle. And then what I'm working on is using optimization techniques that are commonly used in engineering to do model optimization for biogeochemistry models. So this is like modeling the lower trophic levels of the marine ecosystem, things like phytoplankton growing, through like carbon uptake and things of that nature. And so part of the reason why I chose to come here was because I wanted to work with Peter in doing like this ocean research, which I thought was relatively unique in terms of being able to do something like this in a mechanical engineering department. I wanted to do something that felt more like societally relevant in terms of the way things are going. And I thought this was a unique way of doing that. That being said, again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I did a summer research program here before I applied to grad school. And so that summer I was connected with Peter. And so when it came time for me to find a graduate school and a graduate or a lab, it made a lot of sense to work with him because of the way his research aligned with what I wanted to do, and then the fact that we had both worked together and neither of us had any sort of concerns about that relationship. And actually, I think it worked out pretty well. So, yeah.
My turn. So in my undergrad program, I was doing computation solid mechanics. And actually, I was looking for very similar stuffs because I really loved that project. And to be honest, I wasn't very happy to try to completely new things. And my current research group was doing that one. And the other stuff is that my group is focusing on bio-inspired material. That was really interesting for me. So I chose this research advisor.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, our next question, and we'll start with Ken since you were last time, is balancing. So when you're a graduate student, you have so many things that are all priorities. You know, you have to work on, you have to prepare for your prelim exams in your first 2 years, and then you have to be working on research. You need to be reading, attending lectures. There's always classes. If you're a TA, you have to do all that work in your first year. So if you can talk a little bit about how you balance classes, research, and on top of that, something that we value in our department is also trying to make sure you have a life, which by that I mean have some time, some downtime, time to enjoy meeting with other students and activities in the area. And we find that sometimes students who are more balanced tend to actually be more productive. And so if you could talk a little bit about how you find that balance and maybe some things that you like to do for fun in Boulder. So Ken, let's get started with you, and then we'll go to Charlie next.
Okay, so balance. So in the first year, actually, your students have to take some or many classes because we have preliminary exams at the beginning of the second year. So in terms of the first year, I think things would be kind of busy, but I think things are still manageable. And I don't say that was super busy. And actually, in weekends, many people enjoyed some activities, like in summer, they enjoyed climbing or hiking or like that. And in winters, they enjoyed skiing, snowboarding, ice skating like that. And this is just my personal opinion that I think it's better to focus on classes, because if you fail preliminary exams, your program would be kind of messy or busy or maybe difficult. And actually, knowledge and skills we can improve in class is really important for our research works. So even if you focus on classes, that would help you in terms of research work. So I think, so in my first year, I focused on classes, and in terms of research, I did it if I had extra time or enough time. So I think you can keep balance doing something like that.
Yeah, that first year is the most intense, I think. And Ken is right, especially in that first semester, you do need to maintain a 3.25 or higher. So I think as you go along, you find your groove though. So Charlie?
Yeah, so it's hard for me to speak about first year because my first year was during the thickest part of COVID. So I just like wasn't leaving my house because we weren't really supposed to. But since then, I've developed a lot more balance by doing a few things. One of them is I started going to a yoga studio that has classes at 5:30 every night so that I have to leave the lab by 5:30 every night. And that's been working really well for me. Just because if I don't have some other commitment, it's kind of hard for me to keep an eye on my hours. So to generalize that, I would say keep an eye on your hours and don't be spending super large amounts of time on your work if you don't have to. And then another one is I have some really good friends that I like to spend time with, especially on weekends. So Ken was saying a lot of people are really into outdoor stuff, and that's just kind of the culture of Colorado, but it doesn't have to be if you don't want to do outdoor stuff. You can find other stuff to do. Like there are a lot of museums and bars or whatever you're into in the Boulder, Denver area. So we'll do stuff like that, or we'll do outdoor stuff on weekends. And then aside from that, so I'm also involved in other stuff in the department. So then I have a balance in my work day between research stuff and other stuff. So I'm involved in planning a recruitment event that happens later in the winter. And that's been really cool and fun while still being kind of involved in the department.
Thank you. We'll go Skylar, Karen, and Mary.
Yeah, so I think part of it is just prioritizing or like making decisions about your time and then sticking to them. So like deciding that Saturday and Sunday is personal time and then respecting that decision. I think the other thing too that has always been the case for me is like recognizing that there are times when there's deadlines and things that I need to work harder, but then there's other times when things just by the nature of research are going slower and I have more free time to go do other things, and sort of just like recognizing that now I need to like focus and get things done, but then some other time there'll be more time. And then again, I think echoing what Charlie said is I think having balance in terms of the things that I do even at work just makes me more productive in terms of my research, because it's like it allows me to change from just like constantly thinking about the problems related to research, but it also makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something by getting something else done and having something else to do that's more short term and not easy, but like has a more definitive end. So I think those are things that I would echo.
Skylar, actually, and you're involved in CME. You were one of the founders, right? Could you talk about that a little bit? Because I know, and CME for everyone out there, that's our Committee for Equity in Mechanical Engineering. You've done quite a bit there, which has made a huge impact on students. So maybe talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I guess the program that I originally came here was the Summer Multicultural Access to Research Training Program. That was the summer program. And then from that sort of community of grad students that support that program, I got involved in some of these in like student support type organizations on campus. And then during, I think it was the George Floyd events, the department, which had already kind of started to work on things of this nature, came to the grad students and were like, we want to support you better. How can we do that? And so the grad students really came together to form what is now the Committee for Equity in Mechanical Engineering. And this is essentially again, group of grad students that look to communicate and advocate on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion to the department. And a lot of what we're doing now is trying to build community in the grad program. So one of the things that can happen with a lot of grad students is they get kind of sucked into the trap of their research, which can then be a very isolating experience, right? Because it's like if you're just always in the lab working alone, you lose that sense of community. And so a lot of what we're trying to do now is just build community among not just the people in a particular lab, but across the department by holding social events, and again, always advocating for things where if we feel like there's like something that is unfair or something that needs to be a change. So I think initially we did a lot of advocacy type stuff in terms of getting the handbook to flesh out a lot of the requirements, getting things to be much more transparent, getting the requirements much clearer. And now we're kind of doing more of a community building while still trying to find ways to support student success. And so that's sort of the committee. And again, I think me particularly, like having that sense of like doing something for other people, for a community, was super important. Otherwise, I just wouldn't be able to get through my day. And so I think it was an important part of what I needed in order to, be successful here. I couldn't do 40 hours of research and feel like I had had a good week unless there was something where I felt like I did something for something else for other people. So that's kind of where that comes from. And I think Mary and Charlie and I think Kieran is going to be part of sort of the future of CME. And so, we have lots of representation and a lot of student involvement. But yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I know I didn't prep you with that question, but CME has made such a great impact. Now we make sure that we have someone on our graduate committee with faculty who represents that community building organization. And as a graduate program, we work closely with them to try to make sure that our students' voices are heard, even from our recruitment and research week that Charlie heads up. And it's a really great way for the student population to connect with the graduate program leadership. And I know some of the work you've done, starting scholarships, the K through 12 outreach, those are some pretty great opportunities for students to connect and like you talk about, give back, which is one of the things I love about this program. And it's the students who run it, which is incredible. Mary, you want to go next?
I can't. I think Kieran was supposed to, though.
Oh, sorry. I forgot the order. Go ahead, Kieran.
So work-life balance is the topic still.
Work-life balance, activities you're part of.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Things like that.
I feel like the work-life balance is like a mental challenge on its own, because as Skylar was saying, we have like this cyclic nature where at some moments in time, there's really demanding deliverables to give. And at other times when we're at the trough of that wave, I think things are a lot calmer. But what I'm getting at here is, we all call this our job at this point, all the panelists up here. And the mental aspect, I think, is treating it like a job. We have a lot of expectations put on us, but it's grounding to hold yourself accountable just to like normal day activities. Giving yourself a 9 to 5 window, I think is perfectly natural for a student to do for themselves and not be working past that. Having a life outside of grad school is extremely important. Finding your community or the folks you want to surround yourself with is essential, I think, to stay sane and happy throughout this challenging experience. So I would just try and keep that in mind. Hold yourself accountable to what maybe you think you should be doing within the hours of work. Then go be a real person outside of it during the weekdays or on the weekends, whatever that looks like to you. Yeah.
All right, I can go next, or last, I guess. So I'll say that I really appreciate work-life balance, but that being said, I'm absolutely terrible at it. So like my first year, as Ken was saying, like, we have classes, we have to worry about research or TA, we're stressing about, the inevitable prelims that will be coming. And along with that, I also had COVID, I had family issues and everything. So I burn out probably record fast my first year. And so to kind of get through that and realize the importance of work-life balance, I had a lot of support from the department, which was nice, from my advisor, from the grad student advisor, we had meetings. And also we have a lead TA who I talked to. And some of the advice I got here, which I'll pass on if anyone decides to come here, and just to show the support, is not only talking to them. I started using this app called Toggle, which is like a time management app. And it sounds silly, but like when you're doing all of this, it's good to like cap off your hours and say like, I can't do research this many hours. This class homework really isn't worth like this much time. So I did that. And then also the grad school has like a, it's called like grad endurance or something. And so they do weekly seminar classes with grad students, and you're met with people year. And through that, you talk about like how you best do work, what hours, like, are you a better writer, or what hours are you better at doing homework? And so that kind of helps you figure out how to reduce the amount of time you're working, so you can then feel better about, going to trivia night or something like that. So that was my first year. Now I'm much better about it. I, now like I'm done with classes, but I'll kind of rotate my weekends so I can go skiing and do that like Tuesday, Wednesday, and then like work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I think it's all about a balance, and it's also about like communication with the people you work with to make that work. Also, I'm very much, if you all come here and you need someone to be like, I'm struggling mentally, I'm a huge proponent of being like, take a couple days. It's okay. Just like say you need to get away, and then you'll be so much more productive afterwards. For other activities, the grad department does do social events, which is really cool. We have like a fall fest coming up, which will break up your day. CME does social events every month. So there's always stuff that will get you out of the mundane day-to-day thing, which is great. And then we have like symphonies, dances, and everything like that in the Boulder area.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I realized I didn't put a community question in there, but I'm glad that came up throughout this conversation. So thanks for sharing that. We have 2 more questions, and then we'll make sure we open it up to the audience. So really quickly, some students have questions about housing. So if we can quickly touch on that, Boulder is not a cheap place to live. However, our students make it work. So can you briefly talk about how you secured housing, and let's start with Skylar, and then Ken, and then we'll do Mary, Kieran, and Charlie.
Yeah, so when I came to Boulder initially, there was some grad students that were in the program that I already knew, and one of them needed a roommate. And so it was easy for me to kind of just get in with them. And so that being said, I think in general, like engineers are one of like the higher paid grad student populations. And so we're pretty well supported. It is still challenging. But living with someone, living in community, those generally you can generally afford it here. You won't be saving a lot for retirement, but you'll get through grad school. And then the other thing that I think is common is people go like farther and farther away, and it gets kind of cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Although that's like becoming less and less true as more and more people do that. But I think the big thing is just like realizing that you're going to have to live with other people and making the best of that situation.
Thank you. Ken?
So I was not very happy to live alone because, it's very expensive in this city. And I'm an international student. I don't have SSN or taxpayer number or something like that. So my way to find the housing was that I was looking for somebody who already had contract and vacant room because that was the easiest way. So that's my technique to secure housing here. And actually CU provides on-campus housing, but that is very limited. So I think it's better idea to have 2 or more options for housing here. And it's not very difficult to find housing in this city because Boulder is a city of a university. So there are some or many companies who provide like housing or dorms or something like that.
Thank you, Ken. Mary?
Yeah, so when I first came here, I looked on Ralphie's list, which is kind of like a Tinder for roommates, I guess, for CU people. And so that's how I found my first roommate. And yeah, I mean, it worked out fine. We lived in a 2-bedroom in North Boulder, but I think I was gonna say, we also have like a Slack channel for incoming students. And I think sometimes older grad students will advertise their place on it, or you can link up with other people in your cohort that way.
Thank you. And I just put the link to Ralph's list in the chat in case you're curious. And then Kieran and Charlie.
I found my first place off Craigslist, so that was pretty cool.
Me too, Kieran.
Yeah, it works. But I definitely had to put some effort in making it affordable. And what that really means is, you have to sort of kind of find roommates to be able to live and have money for groceries and things like that. I hear the graduate student housing is pretty nice, especially for your first year. They prioritize students who are first years. Air conditioning is included in the bill, so that's pretty cool for the summer months. I never lived in there, but I hear it's nice. And yeah, if you want to live outside or like outside of the near vicinity of Boulder, there's a pretty nice bus system that CU has, which comes with a bus pass. So really, the greater Boulder area is an option for you guys.
Yeah, I found my current housing on Craigslist. But I found my previous place through someone that I met at the recruitment weekend for CU. Actually, I met her at the recruitment weekend for a different university, and then we both ended up at the CU one, and we were like, hey, it's you. And then we ended up living together. So yeah, if you're looking for ways to find roommates, Mary said the Slack channel is a good one. Visit weekends are another good one. And then Craigslist has a lot of great options. There are Facebook pages that have options for people who have sublets or open rooms in their places, and Ralphie's list.
Yeah. So we do, we'll provide resources for that at the time when that comes up, and offer and make sure you connect with each other. Okay, one last piece of advice, and then we'll one last question, and then we'll stop recording and get to audience questions. So any people out in the audience, begin thinking of questions to ask our panel. So final question for you, one piece of advice for PhD applicants who are considering applying to our program that we haven't covered yet. Let's start with Ken. You want to go first, then Mary, and then I'll call on the others.
Okay, so my advice is that students should be should not be passive during research works, because actually when I had an interview with a professor in another university, he said that companies expect PhD students to be independent and they can manage themselves without big advices from other people. So I think PhD people should have enough skills and knowledge to manage themselves. So to improve these skills, I think people should not be passive during research work. That is my advice.
Thank you, Ken. Don't be passive. Gotta be active, gotta be proactive. I love it. Mary.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much right now. I think my primary piece of advice is think about the two things that are most important to you and
Good.
like stick to it. And I think your school will come to you.
I like that. Prioritize what you want and then make your decision based on those priorities. And having that up front will help make that call. That's great advice. Skylar?
Yeah, so the piece of advice that I think I would give most people considering grad school is to remember that in the grand scheme of things, like this is meant to be education. I think when you get into the process of being a grad student, you forget that you are a student, that you are meant to be educating yourselves. And sometimes that requires a little bit more advocacy than you would think, including for yourself, because again, you know, I think as Karen pointed out, it's easy for us to fall into the mindset of this is a job. And then it's also easy for us to be treated as if we're employees and the research is a deliverable. But in reality, you need to sort of negotiate and balance the fact that you are a student and being educated and prepared for a career, as well as this is a job where you need to produce things in order to succeed and get ahead. And so I think, you know, approaching the whole process, trying to figure out where you feel like you can be successful in your research, but also be educated in the way that you want to be educated, that's important. Yeah, and so that's the piece of advice that I would give everyone.
That's great advice. You are a student. You're an employee, but you're a student first. So, and there are people here to help support you through that. So make sure wherever you end up that you remember that. Let's go with Kieran and then finish up with Charlie.
I guess in terms of general advice, no matter what university you guys end up at, I would say don't be afraid to use your support systems that are offered there. CU, for instance, I've used them plenty of times for like support, whether it's through the mechanical department or the university as a whole, for like therapies or things like that. I guess, you know, they're meant to help you and they do help, so use them.
All right, and Charlie.
Yeah, so I'm going to build off of what Mary said. So once you decide what things are important to you, don't be afraid to ask the questions that will tell you whether or not those things are present at the university. Because when I was interviewing with professors, I chickened out every single time to ask them about like work-life balance or their mentorship style because I didn't want it to go badly. And then in the end, that kind of bit me in the ass because I didn't really know what I should expect from these professors. So if you feel scared about asking those things, that's okay, but don't let that inhibit you from actually asking them because they're worthwhile.
That's a really good point to end on because I just wanted to quickly talk about our process. Our deadlines are December 1 and 15. And then after that, our finalists will be invited for a Zoom admission interview. And at that point, faculty will ask you questions, but please, please, please come to those meetings with questions of your own, because that is something our faculty do want to see, that you've engaged, that you've looked at our research, that you've looked at the work of the faculty who you're interested in working with, and that you're prepared to discuss what your priorities are and frame it like Charlie said, frame those questions in that way. All right, with that, we will wrap it up. And now we will open the floor. I will stop recording and we will open the floor for audience questions.